What's up, Taiwan? I'm Erika Liu with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Negotiators from more than 170 countries failed to reach a deal on reducing plastic waste at a United Nations meeting in Busan, South Korea. A deal was expected following the fifth round of talks, but people involved say at least some guidelines may have been reached for a future round. Chris Gorin reports.
Environmental activists from 4 countries, including Taiwan, board a cargo ship carrying chemicals used in plastic production near Busan, South Korea. They were later detained by police. Their goal? To draw attention to the problem of plastic waste, while a United Nations meeting on that very topic was taking place on shore. At a conference hall nearby, negotiators from more than 170 countries tried and failed for the 5th time to reach an agreement on curbing plastic waste. Negotiations are set to continue at a later date. The meeting's leaders tried to be optimistic.
We have succeeded in many areas. However, there are critical matters still need to be agreed.
While the various parties still disagree on a solution, nearly all agree on the problem. The UN says that this year alone, the world will consume 500 million tons of plastic, 80% of which will turn into plastic waste, much of it ending up in the ocean. If nothing is done, the amount of annual plastic waste is on track to triple by 2060. Over 100 countries supported a proposal by Panama that would have set global targets limiting plastic production. However, a handful of developing and oil-producing countries, including Saudi Arabia, rejected the idea, saying efforts should focus on fighting plastic waste, not plastic production.
Every day of delay is a day against humanity. Postponing negotiation do not postpone the crisis.
Environmental group Greenpeace says it's cautiously optimistic, despite the detention of its protesters on the cargo ship off Busan.
We are incredibly disappointed that we did not land a meaningful agreement here in Busan. I think the silver lining is that more than 100 countries representing billions of people stood up for the type of treaty that will reduce plastic production, protect human health, and finance the transition that's going to be desperately needed to address the plastic pollution crisis.
From officials in conference rooms to protesters on the seas, people around the world are pushing for urgent action on plastic waste. But with yet another round of negotiations falling through, they'll have to refocus their efforts on the next one. Kamashu and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
President Lai is on day 4 of his Pacific tour, visiting allies the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, and Palau. There he'll meet with dignitaries and host cultural exchanges while sharing what Taiwan can do for Pacific Island nations. For more on ties between Taiwan and these countries, Alec MacDonald spoke with Graham Smith, Senior Fellow at the Coral Bell School of Asia-Pacific Affairs at the Australian National University.
Palau, Tuvalu, and the Marshall Islands each have unique relationships with Taiwan. Can you talk a little bit about how Taiwan helps these countries and then how these countries help Taiwan?
These nations are very helpful to Taiwan in international fora. They speak for Taiwan in the United Nations and other bodies and advocate for a widening of Taiwan's diplomatic space. What these countries get from Taiwan, and maybe why they've chosen to stay with Taiwan rather than China, is their microstates. They're quite small in terms of their infrastructure needs. So a more tailored and more nuanced approach in some ways better befits them. Taiwan has put a lot of effort into cultivating the political elites in these countries, and many of them have had their children go to a university and school in Taiwan. So they have this close personal relationship with Taiwan that they might not have in sort of the context of a big country like China. That's not to say China hasn't tried to woo these countries away from them. They most certainly have.
Could you explain a little bit about how China in the past years has tried to attract these countries away from recognizing Taiwan diplomatically?
So China operates in different ways in all the different countries. One of the more unusual strategies it's used both in Palau and in the Marshall Islands is it's tried to work through what might be called the grey zone. So people who are businessmen but also have criminal links. And the most prominent would be this guy called Broken Tooth Wan, or Broken Tooth Koi, who appeared in Palau and tried to set up a casino, of all things, claiming that he had a casino license and that basically it was full steam ahead for investment in Palau from China. So this is an interesting thing they've tried. In Tuvalu, they did last time around promise a big island building project, because Tuvalu, of course, is one of these very low-lying atoll countries that is threatened by climate change and by most modelling will pretty well cease to exist by the end of the century. So they offered that. It was quite a big ticket item, but overall, Tuvalu decided to say no to that.
Zooming out a bit, can you explain how the US-China competition is affecting these Pacific Island nations?
I mean, in terms of US-China competition, which is a big topic, particularly in the Northern Pacific. So this applies much more to Palau and the Marshall Islands than it does to Tuvalu, which is a fairly remote part of the world. In the case of the Northern Pacific, in the event of a conflict over Taiwan or the South China Sea, the US 7th Fleet would have to steam through the waters of Palau and the waters of the Marshall Islands. There's also a substantial US military presence in both Palau and the Marshall Islands. The Marshalls has the Ronald Reagan missile base, which is home to some pretty serious hardware. So they are... in a way, have skin in the game just by dint of their geography, not by their choosing.
That was Graham Smith from the Australian National University. A film restoration project at an arts university in southern Taiwan has repaired archival footage that languished in Belgium for many years. The film offers a rare snapshot of Taiwan's development during the mid-20th century. Wesley Lewis has more.
A glimpse into Taiwan's past. This restored archival film called Formosa documents some of the country's renowned scenic spots and of Taiwan's industrialization in the mid-20th century. Shot in 1959, the 40-minute film was commissioned by the nationalist or Kuomintang government to promote its image to the international community after it had relocated to Taiwan from China a decade earlier. It follows the template of an earlier Japanese film, Southward Expansion to Taiwan, produced in 1940 when Taiwan was governed by Japan.
那它里面内容当然就是有点像过去日本总督府时期所拍的南进台湾从北到南的各个景点的一次巡礼，所以两个比较起来就会发现不同的执政者对于这种影像的诠释以及叙事会有他自己想要加进去的意识形态等等的。
The film had been held by the Sun Yat-sen Cultural Center in Brussels, Belgium, which later became the Taipei Representative Office in the EU. It was later bought by Taiwanese film collector Zhu Shijie, who gave it to a team at Tainan National University of the Arts to undergo restoration and digital transfer. It's now being screened to the public for the first time in decades. Zhu says he didn't fully appreciate the historical value of the footage when he acquired it.
我当初不知道，当初只想测试我那台16厘米放映机而已。其实我会觉得说，这种超过50-60年的这个版权，能够留在台湾，不会留在国外。那至少说我们数位化，就是系统数位化以后，可以利用它的影片的价值，去对于未来的影像制作者，然后可以有所帮助。
The team at the university have worked to save archive footage held by members of the public, emphasizing the importance of original images as primary historical documents. The restoration of Formosa offers a priceless snapshot of Taiwan at a crucial moment in the early stages of the country's journey to becoming an industrial powerhouse. Luffy Lee and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Before we go, here are a few scenes from the second annual Lumina Park Light Show in Sofia, Bulgaria. I'm Erika Liu. Take care and see you next time.